Ramo Scale Model Craft. I am Bill, and today we're going to look at painting faces. Um, Painting faces for me, maybe for everybody, it's super difficult. Um, I don't know if it's ever for everybody it's difficult, but it's been really difficult for me. So I found out some things this week, and I kind of cracked the code for me at least to start. Not like this is the be all end all of face painting, but I think I really made some serious headway, and I just kind of want to share that with you. I think it's going to be fun, and the other thing is just super simple what I did. So I thank the guys that told me about it, and I'll tell you who they are, and then I'll tell you the things that I did. I want to say hi to some people. So Neil is here. Thanks very much for coming in. Neil Paul is here. Thanks very much. And Eric, thanks very much for coming in. And Oscar is right back there. He's sacked. He may wake up. We don't know, but he had a good morning and had something to eat right before we started. So let me start this. So, what are we going to do today? So, I've got a couple of different things. So, I'm going to show you how I paint faces, and I'll break it down and do step by step and physically show you how to do it. I had a lot of posting this week, and folks are like, man, I really wish you would show the step by step. And it's like, well, I'm doing that. So here we go. The other thing is I've got some viewer mail, which is really fun. Gentleman Scott Barwick from Sydney, Australia, sent me some pictures. So at the end of the live stream, we'll look at some of Scott's Lancaster that he did. I was doing mud in the last couple of weeks, and Scott pinged me on some comments and said, hey, I did some mud and it looks pretty good. And it does. So I'm going to show you what Scott Barwick did with mud. Okay, so I got Scott Roberts is here. Oh, First Last is here. Hello, First Last. Thanks very much for coming and by. Scott Roberts is here. Thank you very much for coming in, Scott. Scott is from Somerset, England. Scott McLeod is here. Hello, Bill and Oscar. How are you two and everybody doing? Thanks very much for coming in. Scott's in Texas. And this will definitely help. Thanks, Scott. It really came down to a couple of things, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about. And I'm only I'm using more than 3 colors, but for the face, like the main part of the face, I'm doing 3 colors. And like I said earlier, this is not the be all end all. This is me as I gain experience, and I gained a little bit better. And I thought I was at that point this week, first time ever, where I was excited to paint figures. Well, not necessarily figures, but faces. Figures are okay, right? I mean, I like doing figures. I have to be in my dioramas to kind of tell the story that I want to tell. But when it came to the faces, oh my gosh, it just slayed me every time. And this week, with some suggestions from some friends, Evan and also Neil, I think made a little breakthrough for me, and I want to share that because I think other people could too. Okay, so I'm going to go to slides real quick, and First Last says thanks. I'm going to go to slides real quick, and we're going to see what we got. So on the left-hand side, this is honestly what it looks like when I start the process. And I'm going to show you how to start that process and everything like that. But it looks really terrible, but it really works well for me. So that is where we're going to go today. The left guy and the right guy are the same guy. It's just that was after painting. So let's go through here. I always like to start with this. It's a World War I trench diorama that I'm working on. It's quite large. It's going to end up being the largest diorama that I have personally worked on. Gosh, since any diorama. It's big. I've got bigger dioramas, but not the diorama itself. Like in the case, it's bigger and stuff like that. But this is a big darn diorama. It's really concentrating on sappers, the Anzac miners that were used for tunneling, both in Gallipoli, but also in France. There were Anzac miners that were brought into France to help. and also the Livens Large Gallery Flame Projector. And this is the Livens Large Gallery Flame Projector. It was a weapon that was developed in 1916. It was actually developed. This is a real weapon. It's 56 feet long. And what it was deployed in a tunnel. And when it was ready to fire, it would raise up out of the soil and it would push through the soil, and then this big spigot would spray a combination of diesel and kerosene. Yeah, that's what it is. Diesel and kerosene, and just this flame, 150 feet. I think Eric looked up for us one time, 150 feet. Man, I got to tell you, just a devastating weapon. So that was like one of the main focuses of the diorama, but also, the Anzacs, because I really saw that there was a need. Now, the other thing that happened this week is I started all my dioramas videos, and that's what this is. So this is just like the header for all my dioramas. These are all my dioramas I've done. And so I'm going to show you each of those each week. The next one is going to be Tarawa. So I just thought I would mention that. I thought it was kind of fun. And now here we go. So this is actually a figure. This is not just a clump of clay. This is actually a figure that I painted. Now, I painted this guy early on, and I thought, yeah, I'm just going to throw some mud on him and look at it. I mean, it's horrific. It's horrible. You can't even see the guy. And there's a bunch of mud all over. It looks like he's been like in one of those warrior races or something. It's just ridiculous. Well, what I did then was I took a little isopropyl alcohol. So if you're wondering I've seen a lot of people say, hey, you can use this to get that off, or you could buy this and ablatung and all these different things. You know what? I used just some isopropyl alcohol, 99%. So it's, the higher end of the alcohol. And man, it did great. It just took it off. I had acrylics on this. I had Tamiya on this. I had all kinds of stuff on this. And you look how rough it is. I mean, this is me after I took the paint off of that thing so that I could repaint it. This is after repainting, and I did some more. The clothes aren't painted here, but the face is painted, the arms and the legs are painted, and that's what we're going to concentrate on today, is to get him to this. Now, this isn't the final picture. I've got pictures I did after this, and I did some painting after this, but this looks a lot better than the first time through. The other thing that I did on this guy is I wanted to add some fun characteristics, to make this guy particularly stand out. I want these to have personalities and stuff like that. So this is like a big tough guy. He's also balding, which I really liked. Some of the guys, as they get a little older, they maybe lose some hair, maybe even a little bit younger, but he's still, a big virile guy. He's like the biggest, toughest guy in the unit, and he's the kicker. So these are the two tricks. Now, I told you there were a couple of things that people told me, and Neil Maker is asking, was it Neil Bullard? Yes, it was Neil Bullard that gave me one of the suggestions. The other suggestion came from Evan, and Evan is one of my patrons, and it was that thin painting. Now, okay, so let's see this again. Painting back in thin layers. Okay, so what the heck does that mean? First on, let's talk about painting back. And what I mean is, on that very first image that you saw, that's like on the cover of all of this, I'm going to go back to it real quick. If you look on the left-hand side here, you see all of that red paint. Well, it's not red. I'll show you what the paints are. I've got all the paints broken down so you can see what they are. But that is literally how I go in at the very first step. And I've got other pictures to show you, but I want to talk about this painting back method. And what I'm talking about painting back is, and I'm going to use my own face here for an example. When I paint the darker elements, and the darkest element that I'm using in this is light rust. That's one of the colors I'm using. And that's the color that is used on the guy on the left. Well, it's the guy. So what I do is I paint that dark rust in the eyes, down here, any of the shadow areas. And don't think of shadow areas just like under the eyelids and stuff. You've also got shadow areas on the cheeks. You've also got shadow areas on the forehead. You've got it here on the temples. You know, you've got a lot of shadow areas. You got it in the ears, right? So I put all that dark paint in there. And I'm going to physically demonstrate this on I'm not going to do this in my face, but yeah, I'm going to, physically demonstrate it a little bit later on. But that's what we're thinking of. We're trying to get, it's almost like pre-shading when you're doing a tank. You're getting that dark in there, and then I'm going to paint over it. And what I mean by painting back or painting over it is, here's the color, right? I've got this big, huge blotch of color right here. My hand is the color. I'm trying to do demonstrations, and this is the best I can think of. So that's the color, right? But I only want a line. That's all I want, is a thin line. So painting back is just simply, I put on the big swath of color that I can't get really thin, and then I paint on the left, and then I paint on the right to take away the dark color, leaving the dark color in the middle. That's it. That's the trick. It's not a big deal. I'm sure a lot of you are already doing it, but it was something that I hadn't figured out myself. Painting back to that line, painting back to the detail that I want to create. If I should fudge, or, where you're painting and it's like, I just got too much. It's okay. That in the past would just freak me out. It's okay. You can paint back over it. And that's what the painting back is. Okay. So when you're looking at this, I put that stuff on there. I put that deep color on there, and then I start painting back. And then that's the other part of this, the thin coats, the thin glazes, if you will. Everybody talks about this, and I don't know why I never really tried it, because I never really honestly tried it before. I would go in and I would be painting my figures' faces, and I'm going to go ahead and get some of these figure faces up here, the examples I have. Let me find them here, because and I think this will help. So here's that face. Well, when I started painting back, you see what it does. This is like two coats. When people would tell me you have to do thin coats, I'm like, what is it, like 15 or 16 thin coats? No, it's like 2 or 3 thin coats. And when you're doing these coats, and again, some people call them a glaze because it's just very thinned out. You're not adding anything to it. I did clarify that. You don't add something to it. You're just thinning out your paint. So it's almost, there's no paint there. And then as I'm brushing over that stuff, number one, it dries very quickly. It's not like you have to do it and then set it down and come back. It dries honestly very, very quickly. So very light coats, and each of those coats takes it back a little bit further, leaving those details that I want, and then I can go ahead and finish off. I'll show you as we go here. So that's like the first coat. That's the second coat. And then, don't forget the neck. The neck is really important. There's details down there. There's the cords of your neck and stuff like that. And then here it is a little bit further along, where I've got that base detail. And then I bring in my third color, which is brown rose. Okay. So that's it. That's it. That's what I'm going to show you. And it's just a little bit of going back and forth, and it works wonderfully. So let's look at the process. Let's look at the paints, and then we're going to go into a demo, and I'll show you right here. I want to talk a little bit about, my rest here that I paint on and stuff like that, because it's very helpful. And then we'll go a little bit further. I got some comments here. Mark Doremus is here. Thanks very much, Mark, for coming in. And then Neil Bullard. Yep. Eric definitely looks better now. Thanks, Eric. And then there's Neil. Yeah. So Neil, it was partly your suggestions that got me here this week. It was yourself and Evan Daniels. No, is Evan's last name Dan? I have to look. He's one of my patrons. But Evan also was helping me with that and kind of going back and forth. And it really helped out a lot. And as I said at the beginning of this, I'm not done. I'm not, oh, my journey for painting faces is complete. No, not at all. It's just really the start. But I believe my faces are at a point now where I feel I'm making the kind of progress that I need to make. So I'm excited about painting faces. This is the very first week that I've been painting faces, and I was excited about it because I thought I could get a realistic look from my figures. And that's what I'm going to show you. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about risers real quick, and then I'm going to start the demo. So this is what I mean by a riser. This is just a block of wood that I use. I think everybody has those. Well, this little block of wood is about 6 inches tall. And so when I started this week, I was all, down here, because you got to get really close. I'm using my magnifiers and all kinds of stuff to get real tight in there. And you really do have to, unless your eyes are just super awesome. And you got to really get really tight. Well, in doing that, it was causing some pain. I made no secret about it. I've got some back issues. And so I had to be really careful about it. Well, I went from this to this, and I'm really happy with it. So this is it's number one, it's just a beautiful piece of wood, but it is a riser. And I kind of dug that out with my Dremel, but what that does is it puts it right here. And then there's a hole in the back. So I can use one of these kind of clamps. This is a clamp from Rockler. And then I can put that right in there, and then I can clamp it almost like you would do like a task lamp, but I can clamp it to my bench right in front of me. So you remember I talked to you about, I also use a fly fishing clamp. Well, it wasn't doing it for me this week. I was trying to use my fly fishing clamp, but I had to move it so often. It works great for uniforms, but it didn't work for the faces. I had to move around too much. So I made this little stand, and now this stand is 10 inches tall. When I'm painting, I'm just looking down. I don't have to crouch. So take my advice. If you're getting a little older, or you don't want back problems when you get older, get yourself something like this. I mean, it's just a hunk of wood. It's nothing fancy, but it gets it up to a level where I'm not straining myself. I'm very relaxed. I can hold on to it, and steady my hands and then paint. So it works really well for that. And you'll see that while, we're doing our demo. Okay, so I'm going to show you paints next, and then we'll start demoing. Let's go back here. Where are my paints? I think my paints are up here. Okay, so here's my setup when I start doing my painting. I try to get everything. I use a wet palette. I like to use acrylics when I'm doing the detail, but I use Tamiya paints to start. And that's important for me. One of the problems that I have with painting this only with acrylic, even with I'll do a Tamiya primer on it, or primer, is the acrylic always doesn't stick. But you know what it does stick to? It sticks to Tamiya paint really well. So even with a Tamiya primer, I like to do my base colors in Tamiya paint. So all of my base colors, the blocking I talked about last week, that's all Tamiya. So these are the Tamiya paints that I use. And they're, again, these aren't specific to do in flesh, except for the flat flesh. These are specific to the uniforms that I'm doing for these. These are Anzacs, the Australian and New Zealand soldiers that fought in World War II. And so they had very specific, and so these are the colors that I'm using. The dark yellow is the uniform, the khaki is their shorts, medium blue for the scarf. But those are the things, or those are the base coat that I put on them. Then I go to my acrylics on my wet palette, and then the acrylics I use are these. Now, on the left-hand side, those are the ones that I use for the detail, just those three. So those first three are light rust. That's my darkest color. Brown rose, it's almost like a pinkish color. And flat flesh. That's the only three colors I use on the flesh to date. I may expand that as I get better and I work on this more and I learn more about it. But right now, that gives me a very nice, not overly clown face kind of paint job. When I was trying to, develop this, I looked at a lot of other people doing their stuff. And I saw some people that when they're painting these, I mean, it looks like it's really well overdone. The highs are too high, the lows are too low, the contrast is ridiculous. I didn't want to do that. I wanted a subtlety. I wanted real kind of looking skin. And these three colors were able to achieve that. So I like them quite a bit. So light rust, brown rose, and flat flesh. When I'm doing the eyes, I'm doing white, Prussian blue, German cam medium brown. That's actually for hair, and black. And so those are the only, that's the only paints that I put on the figures for the flesh and the eyes. That was it. And I hope that, for me at least, it's meant to make it a little easier to paint. So I'm going to do, let's do our demo. What I'm using is a 5 zeros brush from 725 XDT. There's a bunch of Chinese writing on it, or possible. I apologize. I believe that's Chinese. Yeah, it looks Chinese. It does not look like Japanese. It might be. So I'm sorry if I'm messing that up. That's the brush I use primarily. When I'm doing large stuff, I'll use a 40 brush, much bigger. Just gets more paint on at one time. And now I'm going to switch over, and I hope this is, focused in the right direction. Let's go there. Yeah, so that's not too bad. So this is the top of my little stand, and this is the gentleman we're going to be painting today. And I've done what I said. I've got the colors blocked in for his uniform and for the face. The face is Tamiya flat flesh. So I'm going to hold him here. The very first thing I'm going to go into is that light rust. And I'm, it's light. It's a little puddle of it. I'm adding a good bit of water. And then I'm going in here and just very carefully, I got to get sorry, I didn't put on my magnifiers and I can't see what the heck I'm doing without them. So now I got my magnifiers on. That's much better. Let's see if that is focused. It is. And I'm just going to go around here and I'm just hitting all those low areas. I'm not really trying to be all that careful, frankly. I just want to get it in there, all the low areas. There was a couple of times when I was doing this, I wondered if I should just paint the whole thing with this color, and I don't. I don't want to do that because when I tried that, it didn't work out well. So I'm just going to load this up. I do the lips, everything. I'm not going to go to a red or a crimson. I know some people said, hey, I really love this crimson color. That would be fine, but I'm not doing that. I'm sticking right with this light rust color. It's got enough red in it that the lips do look pretty darn good once it's done. Okay, so you see, I've just kind of slathered that on. Now that's a very light coat, and I'm looking at it right now. This side of the face is already dry. That side of the face is just about dry. So that's one of the things Neil Bullard, who's on today, was talking to me about. Really light coats are really going to help. So you can kind of see there's a little bit more definition in that face just now because of the darkness. It's the contrast that's going to do it. Okay. So the next one I'm going to do, and when I do this, I'm going to go back and forth because I kind of paint this stuff back. And this is what I was talking about before. I'm painting back now on the high areas. Now, what what are the high areas? I think that some people may have that question. If you use the zenithal method, you can do it, but if he's got a hat on, that's not going to work. So what I do is I just think about a skull. And I think that's really important for me. I like skulls. I've looked at a lot of skulls, and I'm going to go back to a picture of me so you can see real quick. Um, when I'm looking at the face, I'm looking at those highlighted areas, and the things that I'm trying to, bring in that the lighter color, the flat flesh, are right here, right along there. So your cheekbone actually goes straight back from your cheek right here, straight back to the middle of your ear. So that's basically going to be not white, but really a highlighted area. So don't forget to put a lot of highlighting there. Below it, right here in the middle of the cheek, that's going to be a lower area. So you're going to keep that a little darker. So let's go back to our figure real quick. I'm going to put my stuff back on so I can see what the heck I'm doing. And there we go. When I'm doing these, I'm just simply identifying that high area and putting a little bit of that light wash on it. The glaze, the wash, the thin down paint, whatever you want to call it, I'm just painting it in. I'm being careful as to where I'm doing it. And the thing that you're going to notice is, and maybe you can notice it here, I'm really trying to get this thing to focus. Look at that. See on his cheek, you see the light colors around the dark, and it looks like, oh, that's too much. It's not. Because what happens is, as this dries, that lighter pigment paint that you put on over the dark is going to become a bit transparent. You're going to be able to see through it. And that highlighted dark area will stand out, but not quite as much. See, now it's a little bit lighter now. The stuff that I did light around that cheek, it's a little bit lighter. And then I can even go back and get even a little bit lighter and go right over the cheek. And when I do that, when I go right over that cheek, it puts paint there and it almost looks like, oh no, I just got rid of it. Well, when that dries, it'll darken up and you're going to see that come through. So it's wet now, but it's starting to dry. And once it dries out, you're going to see the shadow, the reddish shadow below the thinner light paint come through. So that's all I'm doing right now. I'm going around and I'm hitting all those areas with really light passes, glaze, if you will. And that glaze is just going right over that darker light rust I put in. Okay. So already we've got a little bit better face looking there. You see how that cheek looks? Remember how we had that big red kind of in the middle of the cheek? That's already gone. That's two coats. And it's so quick. Now, I've got some comments here, so I want to read those real quickly. Neil, hi. Scott Roberts, hey, Scott, how's it going? That little demo really made sense. Very helpful. Thanks very much. Neil says, that's great. You could add a wrist rest to one side of it and help steady your hand. Also take the pressure off your back. I do the same as my back is bad. Yeah, folks, it's no joke. As you get a little bit older, those things are going to start worrying you. So get a little riser. This riser really helps out a lot. That's the same as Tamiya to start detail with Vallejo. Yeah, and Neil, I think that's great because I like the Vallejo, the Tamiya. It really sticks well. Then highlights, etc. with Vallejo. Exactly. Okay, it's good to think about hot areas and use more reddish color around neck and face if they're digging in summer and working hard against grayish skin tones for cold times. Really good point, Neil. And Neil is a really accomplished face painter too. Have you thought about tattoos on the arms of one or two that will look good? Yeah, and I had that suggestion, and I really like the idea of putting tattoos on these guys. I haven't done it yet because I've got hair on the one guy's arms that I thought I would do. I thought this guy, our kicker, would be great for tattoos, but with the hair on his arm, I haven't done it. This guy might be good though. But yeah, I'd love to do a tattoo. And I think, that's what I've got Prussian blue for. And we're going to talk about that here in a second because there's some other stuff that I did to get like a beard on our guys. So let's go back and see how we're coming along. So his almost completely dry here. So I've just done a little bit, and you see that has started to kind of come through. I haven't touched the brown rose yet. Sorry, I'm going to try to get this in camera. I have not tried this yet, the brown rose. And the brown rose is more of a pinkish tone. And basically what I do is I outline all of the orifices on his head. That maybe sounds weird, but the ear, the eye, the nose, the mouth, all of that, I put the brown rose around it. So I just come in here, I got a little bit of brown rose on here, and I'm going below the eyes, tiny, tiny bits below the eyes, around the mouth, not on the lips, around the mouth, okay? The nose, kind of think of the nose, even the tip of the nose, a little bit reddish. In the ears, I'm putting some of that brown rose in the ears. I might even come back later on and do some of the light rust. And then the cheeks, I can put a little bit, not as much on the cheeks, but a little bit on the cheeks. Another area is the temple. So right in here, I'm trying to get that. There's just so much glare. I'm very sorry about the glare. There's a focus. I'm trying to get in here because I want to get in here, and then the temple. The temple, there's a bit of a ridge coming off the corner of your eye. I'm going to show you here real quick in real time with me. There's a bit of a ridge. Let's see if I can turn my head, and it comes up right here. Okay, so it comes right there. That, behind it, you want a little bit of the darker, and in front of it, on the forehead itself, you want a little bit darker, but you want a lighter ridge right here on both sides of the face, because that is just where the skull is really close to the skin. So it's going to be lighter in color. So you want dark on the temple here. You want darker on the forehead here, but on both sides, you want, this area right here, lighter. So that's what I'm doing right now. And so I'm getting that dark in the temple, a little bit on the forehead. Between the eyebrows is good, right in there. And the cheeks, I don't do much on the cheeks. Below the lower lip, don't forget below the lower lip. I will put another shadow there later, and a highlight on the chin, but right below the lower lip, I want a little bit of that pink. Okay. Now let's not forget the neck. This guy doesn't have as much showing on the neck, but I think the neck is really important because there's two things on your neck that are really important that we pick up. And that is these right here. So you've got large muscles that go up and control your head. And so anytime you move or something like that, see right there, that pops out. You want to pick that up. It's very distinct. It's very easy to see in some of these where they've got a little bit lower collar. It's really apparent, and it's molded in really carefully as well. Let's see if we can get a shot of that in there. You can see his neck, and that's really important to pick up because, there's certain things that you see on these figures that you immediately are going to go ahead and say that's right or that's wrong. We're looking at a figure that looks like a human. We can recognize humans pretty darn easily. So make sure that those things are distinguishing. Some of those things that really stand out, excuse me, make them stand out. Okay, so let's look back at this. Now, I've got the pink in there. Pardon me. I'm now going to go back with my flat flesh. And I just keep going back and forth. I want you to be able to see this. See, that mouth is very pink. First, I'm going to hit the chin just a little bit. And then I'm going to hit the upper lip just a little bit. And when I'm doing this, I'm not loading up my paintbrush. I'm going really light on my paintbrush. The other thing is the bridge of the nose is very light, and the sides of the nose. When you're, I'm going to show you this here. When you're trying to do the nose, I want to put basically a flesh tone line right there, okay? And I want to pick up the side of the nose and right here, right there. I want a larger, like, not I say white, but it's light color right there on the nostril, on the side of the nostrils. So it's a large kind of area here on the nostrils, goes to a thin here, and then very light here. This other stuff is shaded real nice. And by doing that, as you're going back and forth between the colors, so I'm doing the brown rose and the flat flesh. I'm even going back to the light rust every once in a while, but mostly it's the brown rose and light flesh at this point. And I'm kind of going back and forth with those, and I'm mixing them. Sometimes I'm doing a little bit of wet blending, but typically it seems to go better if I don't do that. With these acrylics, in the very minute areas that I'm working on here, you can lose your detail really quickly with just a dot. You know, it's I mean, you know, these heads are smaller than a pea. And so if you're not careful, you can blow out your detail by just, you know, trying to paint or trying to use too much water or something like that, because it'll also lift, it'll reactivate some of that paint because it is so thin, and you could lose some detail. So don't load your brush up. I'm going back as often as I can, but I want to be careful with how much paint that I'm putting on. It's very light, and just do it repeatedly. It only takes about 3 or 4 times. It's not like 15 or 16 like I thought it was going to be when I first started this thing. So it goes very well. I want to make sure that I've got all of our notes here. Oh, okay. Yeah, I've got everybody's comments. Great. So let's go back to it. Stuff's dry again. So I'm kind of padding this so that stuff dries while I'm yammering at you. So let's go back to it. I think he's looking pretty. Whoa, I think he's looking pretty good. I just dropped that in my blue paint. I dropped my paintbrush. Sorry, I got to clean that off. I dropped it in paint, so I don't want to get it all over the place. So now that I've got a pretty nice face going here, I'm going to do the eyes. Now, I wasn't doing eyes previously. What I was doing was just doing a black dot. And I was just afraid to do the color. Well, I changed that. Friend of mine, Evan, said, go to LPJ models. And that's what I did. I went to LPJ models and I saw how he did his eyes, and I liked it very much. So I've got a pretty good face going now. Some people start with the eyes very first thing. You can. I don't know. I always did it after the fact. I always wanted to get to the you know, the face itself, and then I go back to the eyes. So these eyes are super simple. I'm not done with the face, but I'm gonna do the eyes. And what I'm gonna do is grab just a little bit of white. And again, you're not gobbing it on there. It's still very light. If I've got to do the eyes in 2 strokes, that's just fine, even 3 or 4. All I'm doing is I'm going in here. I got a little bit of white on there, and I'm just going one little swipe, and I'm going side to side. So when I'm doing this, it depends on some of the figures. These figures have like a little well built in where the eye is, so it'll hold the paint. It's kind of weird. You have to see it. It's almost like a V cut where the eye is. There's not a lot of definition in there, but it holds the paint very nicely. And so basically what you do with the brush, I'll do it with the end of the brush. You just go in here and just right like that, just straight across, horizontal. Okay. That gets the white in there. Make sure it's dry. because it's in a little place, because it's watery, we're using very light glazes, washes, and, thinned out paint. If I try to go in there and it's not dry, because I did this, just whatever color I put on there, the whole thing becomes that color. So don't do like I did. Take your time, move on to something else. It'll dry quickly, and then come back. So we're going to say mine's dry. It may not be. And the next color I'm going to do is the blue. So first I do the iris, then the last thing I do is the pupil. Here's the problem. Sometimes when you're looking straight at it, you can say, okay, I want the eyes looking left, or I'm looking right. Well, the first time I tried to do it, I was so concentrating, I was just thinking of that one eye. And then I couldn't get them to line up. You got to get your eyes to line up. So when you're doing the eyes, look at it straight on. If the head's turned, whatever, just look at it straight on and get where those are going to be. Don't try to make a circle necessarily. A lot of times when your pupil, or I'm sorry, your iris is shown, you don't see the whole iris. Look at my eyes right now. You see basically the bottom end of it. The top is like clipped off. So you're not going to have a full circle in there. That would be like this. I got a full circle. Well, typically you don't. So all I have to do is get a little swipe in there where I want it, blue, and then I've got my iris. So I'm going to take a little bit of blue paint. I'm using Prussian blue. Prussian blue by itself is probably a little bit too dark to use for like an eye color. So I'm using a little bit of white to make that a little bit lighter color. The other thing is, I read, if you have too stark of white, I'm not doing that. Use a kind of a gray. That was LPJ Models. Great video, and I think you all should look at it. But I kind of like the white. It's so small, I want to see it. So now let's go back to our deal, and I'll show you how I'm doing this. So I've got my white in there, and I went horizontal. Now I'm going to go vertical. And it is kind of just almost like a dot, but I am kind of doing a stroke. It's just a really, really tiny stroke. Oh, you can't really see, but can you see now? I want you to see that it looks terrible, and that's really okay. You can always go back and clean it up. Remember that first trick that I told you about that my friend said to me? What is? Well, it's the painting back part. If I get something a little bit too big like this, where I got googly eyes, that's perfectly fine, because now I can go back and paint it back. All right? And that's what I'm going to do. Now, I got a couple of questions here real quick. Neil, what scale of figures? These are all 35th scale. Eric says a hairdryer can help with speeding things up. I think a hairdryer can help speeding things up, yes, but it can also make your paint shrink on the outside faster than it does on the inside. In other words, okay, so if you use because I've done it, if you use a hairdryer, sometimes if it's a thick paint, it'll dry the outside, but the inside, the stuff that's not right on the surface of the paint doesn't dry. And so it dries at a different rate. And then that can give you a crack on the surface of your paint and cause it to fall off. Doesn't always happen. And, if you like using a hairdryer, it should work fine, but you just got to be aware of that it can cause your paint to crack a little bit, especially acrylic. Are these all Panzer Aces or General Vallejo model color line? Very good. One of them is a Panzer Aces. Thanks very much, Mark. This is Panzer Aces, and this is the light rust. And that is my darkest color that I use for, my face painting is the Panzer Aces light rust. The other ones are model color. All of them are model color. Yep, they are all. Vallejo model color, yeah. I can give you the numbers. I didn't do that in my little infographic because I've got that, but I will. It's not a bad idea. Okay. So now I am going to go back to our cut, and I'm going to paint in around the eye. And that's, man, I got to tell you, it just seems so simple and maybe even a little dumb that I didn't think of it, the painting back part. It's so easy because like the blue just went kind of everywhere. But the nice thing is I'm able to come in here and just paint it back a little bit. I don't have to, throw the baby out with the bathwater. Look at that. So now I've got nice looking eyes and I just had to kind of paint them back after doing the blue. I'm not done. I still got to do the black. So that is next. But I got to let it dry a little bit. So I'll go to a different part and do some more shading. On this side, it's just you can see the side better, I think. On this side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to define the jaw a little bit. Right in front of the ear, you also have kind of a white area here. So I'm defining the jaw. So let me turn this way. I'm defining the jaw. So I'm painting along the jawline here, and then I'm going straight up in front of the ear with the lightest color, with the flesh tone color. I want in my cheek, I want a darker tone here, but I don't want it here on the jaw, and I don't want it here in front of the ear. It's just lighter in color, okay? So that's what I'm doing. Painting that up like so. And then a little bit over the cheek because the cheek is a little dark. And then a little bit over the temple. And then I'm doing that line in front of the temple. So I went from the cheek all the way up. I went from the cheek all the way up, and then I came in to here, and then I went straight up again with the light color. All the other places around that where I'm kind of zigzagging around, those are darker color. They don't have to be extremely dark like I've seen some people do where you have almost like a clown face. I don't want that. I want subtlety. I want variations. I want to see that's darker, then that's lighter, and all that kind of stuff. And I got to tell you, you're going to be able to see it. Your brain is going to pick this stuff up very well because you're going to recognize this as a face. So you don't have to get clown makeup on there. You don't have like rosy cheeks, and you don't have to have, because I've seen that where like they're using white on the bridge of the nose. They're using white on, the cheekbones. I think that's too much. I don't think you need it. I think subtlety is going to look a lot better. Okay. So I'm going to go back in here and see if our other stuff is ready. And yes, it is. I can do some black now on the pupil. And again, this one is just a dot. I don't necessarily want it in the center. Well, I do want it in the center of the eye, but I don't want it in the center, like top to bottom. I want it kind of a little bit closer to the top. Boy, that one looks pretty good. Well, the right eye looks good. I think I have to work on the left eye a little bit more, but the right eye looks really good. The left eye, I got too much paint and I flooded it like I was telling you not to do. Well, that's exactly what I did. So I flooded the left eye, but the right eye looks really good. Okay. So now, I mean, he looks pretty darn good. He's got rosy cheeks. He's got bright eyes. He's got, lips that don't look like he's wearing lipstick. That's the other thing. I don't like too much red on the lips. That's why I just use the base color, the light rust for lips. But I think he looks pretty darn good so far. Now, folks, the thing I'm trying to get across here is I'm not done on my journey on learning how to paint faces. But these faces look good enough for me that I'm excited about painting figures again. And I know that I'm going to continue learning from painting figures in this method. I love it. It works great. It's so simple. It's 3 colors. Like I said, I don't know that you wouldn't expand those colors. I don't know that I'm not going to expand those colors later. I think I probably would. But the biggest issue here is I'm not avoiding painting these figures, which is exactly what I was doing before. I was literally avoiding painting figures until like the last moment because it was just such a I don't know, it's just, you think about, oh man, I got to do figures, ugh, it just went away this week. That feeling completely went away. And I think for me, that's a huge thing because it's going to keep me working on this stuff. Okay, here we go. Don't need the numbers, just the idea of what to look for in the exploded paint racks at local hobby town. I got you, Mark. That sounds really good. I'm guessing testers quit making paints and putting it in the glass bottles, which is totally bumming. I've still got a whole bunch of testers paints, but enamels are a whole different animal to paint with. That's for sure. Neil, why not start with the iris pupil and just paint back to the whites? I guess you could, if that works better for you. For me, it's easier to do the iris and then hit the pupil after the white, because it seems like I'm doing the white, then the pupil, then the iris. Or I'm sorry, that was backwards. The white, then the iris, then the pupil. It just seems like it goes that way. Not to say that I haven't gone back after messing up the white and bring in a little bit white. This process, that painting back process, works throughout the process. So as I'm painting, I may have to go back in and bring an older color that I was working on. I'm not completely done with this color because I started with it. I may go back and bring some stuff in. But the nice thing is I'm only having to deal with 3 colors. For me, that makes it a lot less intimidating. I don't have to worry about, what colors do I mix, or is that the right color? Is that the right color? Number one, it needs to look right to you. Okay. And number two, if you're doing stuff at different times of the year, different exertion levels, things are going to vary. What I'm trying to give you here is a base that if you were intimidated with faces like I was, I think this is an easy way to start to get you on the journey to get better as you do it longer. Because that's how I look at it for me. Like I said, I'm not done painting faces. There's a heck of a lot more I got to learn. But man, I was able to get a level of paint on those faces that it's going to keep me interested, because I don't have to be embarrassed by it. I don't have to go, oh man, I need to come up with excuses, which I've done in the past when I'm showing somebody my figures. I'm just like, yeah, well, I just didn't work. Well, I don't have to do that anymore. So that's pretty awesome. And I got to thank Neil Bullard, who's on the call today, and also my other friend that is, I can't remember his name right now, but it really, really helps to get just like that one thing, right? It's just that one thing. You're like, man, if I could just, well, that was that thing for me this week. It's just these 3 colors. It's just the painting back, and it's the light coats. It does not take long. And the results, I love the results. I'm not intimidated anymore. So I don't want to keep hammering on about that, but I really do like it. Scott, yes, I'm that old. Me too, Scott. I literally have all my old testers. Less is more. Absolutely right, Scott. Looks pretty good, Bill. Thanks very much, Scott. I'm impressed. Bill looks great. Thank you. Neil, no probs. Good to help each other out. Thank you very much, Neil, because that really made a big difference for me. When you said, your technique, and we were texting back and forth and talking about, because Neil does very nice figures. He was just like, man, light coats, light glazes, light. And that really made a big difference. And then when it was coming to figuring out the 3 colors that I needed to do this, because I really needed to boil it down to the simplest thing that I possibly could to get over that hump of anxiety, that made a big difference. The paints I'm using, you can use, certainly, but you can also use your own. I don't know that these are the optimal paints to do it. But I really like the results with these paints. It gives me a flesh tone that I can work with, and I can model, not model, but model. I can get it to look a little pink here, a little bit, it's not just this one color. You know, you don't want that. You want the face to look like it's alive, and that means there's going to be little bits of color here, a little bit darker there, a little bit lighter there, blemishes, um, facial hair, you know, all that kind of stuff goes into it. So let's talk about facial hair. I've got two methods of doing facial hair. Number one, blue, using blue for facial hair. I saw that 3 or 4 years ago, where folks were using the color blue to put facial hair. And I think it works pretty good. I did it and it works okay. For a little heavier kind of beard, for a lighter beard, I just use black. And when I say I use black, it's hard to explain how little black I use. Basically, I want to take the tip of my 5/0 brush. I want to dip it in the black. I want to take some water on the same dip. I just put it right in there, and then I make a little puddle. And then from that puddle, I'll take the brush, I'll start another puddle, and I'll go get more water. I may do that 3 times because every time I start a new puddle, it's thinner and thinner and thinner. Okay. I want it so thin that it looks like dark water. That's it. And then I'll take that and I'll put it on the jawline. Now, I did that on this guy. I'm going to see if you can see it. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it. I'm going to give it a shot here. So I don't know if you can see. Yeah, you can. Can you see that? Where he's just got like a shadow? That shadow is black. I use black to get his beard shadow. And it's like a 5 o'clock shadow. It's not a real heavy beard. Now, I got another guy who's basically growing like a 3 or 4 day beard. And that's this guy. And this is where I use blue. So the blue color gives a little bit more depth, a little bit more. And then I used a little bit of white because I wanted him to be a little bit older. So there might be a little bit of gray in there, kind of like me. I'm trying to get this. There you go. This is what blue looks like as beard. Okay. So you can do that blue trick. You can do it with the black. It's up to you. It depends on how, heavy you want the beard. I also think blue works really good in skin tones. I've done that before. I didn't do it on these because I wanted to, like I was saying before, get it down to the bare minimum, just the 3 colors you need to do this. And that's what those are. The other thing is when you're talking about hair, and that's where I use the brown, I never use just brown. I never use just brown on the hair, any color on the hair, just one. It's always 2. It's got to be a little different. My hair isn't just one color. Everybody's hair has tones and shades and stuff like that. So on like the mustaches, he's in there. I can't get him out. There's another guy with here with a mustache. We've got our guy here. He's got a mustache. Can't see him hardly for nothing. Let's give it a shot here. So he's got a mustache. He's got like a handlebar mustache, stuff like that. I want to put that on there, and then I want to highlight it. Highlight the hair just like you would highlight any other thing. Give it little, directional swaths with like a lighter color and stuff like that. I do that on the hair. I do it on this guy. His hair is done that way. Do it on the sideburns that you can just see coming out from underneath the hat. All of those things really make it helpful, in selling it. One of the things that I'm doing with these guys is I've got these 2 gentlemen that I've talked about before, and these 2 gentlemen are sitting at a table and they're playing cards. And one of them is going to be facing me. One of them is not going to be facing me. So the back of the guy's neck, you got to do either the blue or the black, whichever you want, a little lighter, like you just got a haircut, or it's a little bit darker. You can do just a little tiny blue, and it looks like the hair is fading into the skin quite nicely from like a fresh haircut. If it's a little older, then I would use just the regular hair and then just spot it, kind of just dabbling or dappling, dapple. Yeah, just kind of dappling the paint on there, and it looks a lot better. And I'm going to have to do that with one of them because you're going to be looking at him from the back, and so you want that hair on the back of his neck and how his hair comes down. You want that to look right, nice too. Um, One of the other things I did, and we're going to look at him now, and it doesn't come out that great. My lighting, I don't know what the heck, but it's just too bright. But is the hair on his arms. Now, the hair on his arms is not just throwing on some paint and painting thin lines. The other thing that I did was that pink paint. I took a little bit of I call it pink, but it's not pink. It's the brown rose. And I mixed a little bit of the dark color that we started, the light rust, and I mixed those really light together, and I just put it on top of his arms. And so what I'm doing is here. So on top of the arm, so I want hair on the arm here. So I paint, just some lines, gives a little bit of hair. But then with that darker coat that I'm talking about, mixing up where it's the light rust and the brown rose, I had to look at them. I mix that up really light, and then I put it right over where the hair is. I don't even put it on the elbow because there's a lightness there, right? I want to see shading from the hair on his arms. Also could be a little bit of suntan, but by having that there and not here, I don't have it here. This is still light color, but this is dark. It makes it look, and if you're looking at this guy, it's hard to show here, but if you're looking at his arms right now, it looks great. It looks like he's got maybe a little bit of a tan and it's a little bit darker underneath the hair on his arms. When I put him in the diorama this last week, I also noticed that the lighting inside my diorama was washing out some of the colors on some of the guys that I painted. Hugely important. It's important to go back and put them in the situation that you built for them and see how your paint reacts. I learned that a long time ago, which was really nice. Somebody told me, like, hey, look, when you're doing it, you're painting here, you got all this light, and that's all fine and well. Well, you stick them in the diorama, and it's in lower light. So you got to look at them in the situation. So I don't just paint them here and say my figures are done. If you're doing a surface diorama, that works wonderfully. You can certainly do that, because you've got pretty much the same light that it's going to be displayed in because it's only on the surface. But when it's in a room, if it is lit some way because there's another darker area, whatever the case may be, if there's a light involved that is illuminating your figure, you need to put them in that light and then adjust your paint because of the light. And that happened specifically with this guy, the kicker. When I put him in the tunnel last week, you couldn't see any of the hair. The light that was coming off of the other guy that's holding a little candle in there for him, you just couldn't see the hair. So I had to take him back out, get a little harsher on so it was a little bit more contrast on it, put him back in, and it worked great. So I think I even have some pictures of that. But that's just one of the things that when you're painting your figures, you have to remember, if it's a lit thing, if it's not just a surface diorama, if you're putting them in a room or there's light on them, you need to paint them with that light on them. Because you could just lose detail, because that's what I did. Okay, so now that was the demo. I hope that was helpful. I mean, he looks pretty good. I'll take some pictures after the fact. I mean, his eyes could be a lot better. What I've been doing is basically finishing one figure a day. I mean, I've got a bunch going on. I've got like 6 figures right now. 6 figures right now that are being painted. 2 of them are done. And the other ones are really close, but as I'm painting all of them, I can finish like one a day. And that's not too bad. If I try to rush it, that's never good. So I'm taking my time and getting them done. Once they are all done, then, we can move on to the next one because I've got more figures. I've got right now 16. I think, or 17 figures. I'm going to have 29. And I've really looked at where and where they're going to be in the diorama and everything. There's going to be 29 figures in total. So I've got to get, moving on these guys. Anyway, all righty. Well, thank you very much. I am going to say, hey, Go For It Painting is here. Hello, Go For It Painting. Great to see you. And then Neil says stage makeup or evening makeup, old ideas women have known about forever. Yeah, very, very good. Because there's times when the situation is really going to alter how something is painted, so be very aware of that. Okay, so I am going to get back to some pictures because I have closer pictures of these guys. I don't know that they're going to look good closer, and that's kind of the trade-off, but they look good at a distance, so we're going to look at them closer though. So let's see what that looks like. Here is our guide. That's where we basically left off in our slides. And this is the guy with the beard. I have not done anything on his uniform yet. I actually repainted his uniform last night. Here's another guy. He does have some paint on his arms and some hair in his arms. I've got to really look at his arms again. I think his arms don't look as good as they should. Stage. And this guy, I like this guy. He's the guy that I'm currently working on. He's not doing too bad. And then, of course, this is our kicker. And that's Tom Selleck. And that's the guy that we painted today. And that's kind of, you can see where it started. This would have been a great picture for me to show you how to do this stuff. I don't know what the heck I was thinking. And then that is our kicker in the diorama. So that's how he looks. And there is our blue shirt guy in the diorama. That's with all the lights out in the shop and just the lights from the diorama. And I love how the shadows are being thrown on the wall. I really like that. There's a whole scene of our 4 miners. And then that's just to get the phone in there. I had to do it kind of at an angle. Okay, so now we have some viewer mail. Now, I've said this before. If you've got a diorama that you would like to talk about, if you want to send it to me, please send me 3 pictures. I would love to see your diorama. I would love to show everybody else your diorama. I'm not going to judge it. I'm not going to, we'll look at it, but I'm not going to say this is good and that's bad or you should do this. That's not what I do. I just want you to show your stuff. And so if you want to send it to me, do. And we have a treat today because we have some pictures from Scott Barwick. He's from Sydney, Australia, and he did a Lancaster. So we're going to take a look at those. So I just got 4 pictures. Scott sent me more, but I don't want to go through too many. So this is Scott's Lancaster that he started, and it's a beautifully built Lancaster too. And he started the base. And that's not pink, but it looks like the same kind of foam that I use. Then he dug this out and put some mud in there. And he got a little grass in there, and he's got some water. And then I really like this shot because I think the mud looks pretty good. It might be a little much for me, but I really like how the mud got really chewed up and thrown up on top of those wings as this thing is coming in. I mean, I think it looks great. And that's why Scott sent this in. We were talking about stuff and I was doing some mud and he said, hey, I did some mud and I think he did a great job. So let's look at that mud and I'm going to read to you what Scott sent in. So Scott says, good morning, Bill. I hope you are well. And I need some water because I'm not going to. I want to start coughing a heck on you guys. Thanks for asking me to send in a few pics of my diorama. I hope you don't mind me sending it here, but I don't have Facebook. The backstory is the Lank has returned relatively unscathed from its night bombing raid over Germany. Unfortunately, flak had, unbeknownst to the crew, disabled the starboard landing gear, and the Lank was forced to land with just the port side wheels. The landing area had been made soft by heavy rain and subject to enemy strafing. The Lank made it a fairway on one landing gear while the starboard nacelles chewed up the ground until the port undercarriage hit a large shell crater and snapped off, causing the plane to pivot and lurch to its final resting place on the diorama. I called it 2020 when I built it as a metaphor, haha. Anyway, the base is high density foam, which is scraped out to make the runnels caused by the nacelles, and the large pothole I used acetate glue, I'm not sure what that is, to make the shell craters, etc. Oh, I wonder if he just used CA glue and it just, yeah, and it melted the glue. It kind of looks like that from this picture. I kept the various bits of scraped out HDF, which I mixed with soil, PVA glue, and paint to use the soil and mud pushed up by the plane. I then used water effects to represent muddy water in the shell holes and runnels. The mud on the Lank was made with a mixture of soil, paint, and PVA glue. Hope this makes sense. I will attach 3 pics so you can see the process. Yeah, so I think that's great. Thank you very much, Scott. I mean, it's really well done. I love, see, this is what he's talking about in the picture. He talks about under the left wing there's some puddles, there's some water in there, and he added some nice little waves and stuff like that in there. I do really like the mud that you did. I think when I was trying to paint mud last week, on that figure, on the kicker, it looked horrific. And I think Scott, just chimed in at that point and said, hey, look, paint him, just paint him like your regular wood, and then physically take some mud and put on them, just like he did on the Lancaster. And that does look great. It gives it depth. There's actual shadow. The dirt looks like dirt. I wouldn't need that much, certainly, but for this, because you got those propellers chopping stuff up, it's everywhere. So yeah, very, very cool. And thank you so much, Scott, for sending stuff in. I think it's wonderful. I would love to see more folks' creations, even if it's an idea. If you've got a sketch for a diorama that you're thinking about, send it in. I would love to see it. Dioramas are my life. This is what I do, right? I've got this and I got family. That's it. So this is my full-time gig. So if you've got an idea for a diorama, if you've got a diorama you did, and I don't care when you did it, send me some pictures. It'd be fun. I really just want 3 pictures, folks. Sometimes I just get, because I've done this one other time, and that gentleman also sent in a whole bunch, and Scott sent more, but that was okay. It wasn't too much. It was 4 emails. The other person did it. I think there were 10. So please just send me your 3 best. It doesn't mean you can't be on again and show me other pictures. So just your best 3 pictures, send it to me. Please tell me the story. I love the story. I love that Scott said, this is what happened to this Lancaster. This is what got it in this condition. It's so important to a story and a storyteller to have a full story to tell, right? If I don't have that story, I think it makes it a little bit more difficult to build the diorama and maybe to get the story across. I can see exactly what Scott was talking about in his pictures. I can see exactly what he's saying about hitting the pothole, chewing up, it does such a great thing to have a story along with your diorama. So please, if you have something like that, I would love to see him, and I would like to show him, just like we've done here. Send me a little bit of a written thing, send me 3 pictures and your diorama, and we'll look at it and we'll take a look. If you do have questions, just like in here, send me some questions. I love answering questions. And during the week, I'm pretty darned active while I'm building. Folks are online and we're talking back and forth. I get a lot of texts every day. So thank you very much. I really appreciate that, Scott. It was a really nice build. Okay, I want to talk about these guys. These are my Patreons. I got to tell you, I love my patrons. My patron site's doing pretty good right now. I just got some new people on. There's also a free area in Patreon. Are you getting up, baby? Okay. Oscar's coming to see us. So there is a free area in Patreon now. If you're not sure about that, I do most of my posting. I'm going to tell you straight up, most of my posting is for my paid patrons, and for the stuff where like we do group builds and we do one-on-ones. I get online with folks. That's paid, but there is some content that I'm posting up there that is free. And so if you want to be a free patron, you can go there too, and you'll see stuff. So thank you very much, everybody. I really appreciate coming out. Please like and subscribe. I've got great folks here that are saying, hey, please like and subscribe, because they know I always forget. So I really appreciate that. I want to hit some of the last messages here so I don't miss anybody. Stage make, evening makeup. Yep, we know. I'm sorry, we got that one, Neil. Thank you, Boo. You're a very knowledgeable instructor. Thanks, Scott. I really appreciate that. Don't forget the like button. Thanks, Go For It Painting. See what I mean? These guys are great. And Scott McLeod. And subscribe. I really appreciate that. Go For It Painting, sure. Scott McLeod, awesome work, Scott. Incredible. Yeah, he did do a great job. Love the story on the lank. Awesome stuff. Good day, Bill and fellow modelers. Sorry for being late. No, hey, Bush Ranger. Bush Ranger's my first member. Thank you very much for coming in, Bush Ranger. I started this thing, and I'm afraid there's just not a lot of stuff there yet. But I started a thing on my YouTube channel where you can become a member. And so Bush Ranger is my very first member, and he's from Australia, and we've had some great conversations. So thank you very much, Bush Ranger, for coming on. I really, really appreciate that. And I'm going to have more content coming up for you. So when you sign up for a member on the channel, I'm going to have some stuff that's similar to Patreon, because I think that's what YouTube's trying to do, of course. So you'll have some similar stuff, but I'm trying to not have the same stuff. Okay. So yeah, thanks very much. That's really cool, Bush Ranger. Neil, the same way I do my mud. Wonderful. And I've never used real dirt. I just haven't. I always use my sanded grout. I'm going to have to try real dirt. I got plenty of it, and from the Somme. That is a story that we're going to have to tell when you're on. I think that'll be great. We talked about that a little bit before, Neil. Yeah, we'll probably have to talk about that when you're on, sir. That's really, really cool. Thanks for always sharing. Thanks, First Class. That's really cool. Thank you very much. Bush Ranger, you're awesome, dude. Thank you very, very much. And Scott McLeod, where do we send the pics to? That's a really great question. So if you look about on my channel, there was an About tab. And in there is my email. So you just click on that, and that's my email. It goes right to me. It's bill@scalemodelcraft.com. And then you can send me your pics. Please, just 3 pictures. Please do a little write-up, just like Scott did. It was fun reading it too. And if we get a couple of folks, we'll do 2. It's totally fine. Don't pardon me. Don't worry about not being, I guess, somebody else is already in. No, not at all. You're going to be in there. So that'd be really cool. Hey, John is here. Thanks very much, John. John was not feeling so great last week. So I hope you're feeling better, John. That it sounded like you had a heck of a lot of a cold, sir. And boy, I hope you're feeling lots better. Well, thank you very much for coming on. And thanks, everybody, for coming out today. This has been a lot of fun. Oscar really enjoyed it, as you can tell. We woke him up, but he needed to wake up. It's time. And this week I'm going to be doing editing. I have a video coming out on Tuesday, and that is on Tarawa. And so this weekend I'm going to do a heck of a lot of that to try to get that ready for you, so that we have that on Tuesday. So there's a new video coming out, and it'll all be all about Tarawa, and should be pretty fun. Well, thanks, folks. Everybody, I really, really appreciate it. And Scott, boy, Scott's a member now. So he that's why this kind of comes up a little different. That's really, really cool. Thank you very much. Hey, Mr. Toad. Thank you very much, Scott. Mr. Toad is Scott Barwick. Thanks very much, Scott. That is just a wonderful, wonderful thing. We had a lovely time looking at your pictures, and we love the little story that you came up with. It. The story is wonderful. So thank you very much. Well, everybody, I'll tell you, I had a wonderful time today. I hope you did too. Again, like and subscribe. I do this every Friday. I also do a short every day. I do a short on my current build. It's probably going to be kind of boring now because it's going to be figures for an awfully long time, but I'll try to make it interesting. So thanks everybody. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Happy Veterans Day. Happy Remembrance Day. This happens for a lot of folks around the world. And this weekend we're remembering our veterans. So thank you for your service. Thank you for everything you do. And I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. We'll see ya. Oscar and I are saying bye-bye. Have a great day. We'll see you everybody.